This is the Soul-Filled Sisterhood podcast, and I'm your host, Nicole Burgess, licensed marriage and family therapist and an empowerment mentor for women. The information shared in this podcast is not a substitute, nor is it to convey professional, psychological, financial, or medical advice. If you could use such services, please seek them out from someone you trust. Now here is today's episode. Episode 106. If you find yourself often overwhelmed and stressed out, I encourage you to go out to NicoleBurgessCoaching.com/end overwhelm and watch my workshop on the 5 shifts to end overwhelm and live a more balanced and connected life as a highly sensitive woman entrepreneur. Now here is today's episode. Well, welcome, sisters. Today I want to talk about being a leader and having moments of loneliness and what to do so that you can really stay courageous in your leadership. So where this is really coming from, a couple months back, I was speaking to some of the women that are in the mastermind group that I am in. And a few of them talked about it can be really challenging at times to be the leader. And again, this may be in your own business that you own, in a corporate job that you are working at where you're a manager, a leader. It could also be in your own home. And they talked about, sometimes when they're making these difficult decisions or thinking outside the box, it feels like, people may be against you in a way because they don't necessarily like your ideas. They don't like the changes that you're making. And so you can feel kind of lonely. I mean, especially one of them was talking about how when COVID really started to break through in our country, how she had to really pivot and look at things differently and make these difficult decisions about this project that she was doing later this year and what she could do about it, really trying to figure out how to pivot and still support her audience, the clientele that she works with. And it felt for her, she was talking about how it felt difficult to do, yet having the best interest of her audience in mind. But not everybody agreed to that. They're like, oh no, I wouldn't want to do that, da-da-da-da-da. So we're going to talk a bit about when you're making decisions and what that means. But the biggest thing is there are going to be moments of time where you may truly feel very lonely as a leader. And there's some things that you can do to help move you through those moments in time versus getting stuck in them. So I want you to think about, as a leader, oftentimes what that means is you're going to make some unconventional choices, right? You're a strong, intelligent woman. You've got high integrity. You really do think outside the box. Not everybody's going to like that. Well, it's easy to go to those conventional things. It's easy to play small. It's easy just to keep doing the same of the same of the same, and you're going to get, pretty much the same results. But that's not who you are. You do things differently. And when you do that, you truly run the, quote, risk of people not liking it, and that's okay. Brené Brown, in her book, Dare to Lead, there's a quote in there that she talks about: integrity is choosing courage over comfort. So I really want you to stay true to your own high integrity that you have as you're making these decisions. Again, it's for the best interest of your audience, your clientele, the people that you're working with, the decision makers, your corporation, whatever that may be. You're doing these things because you want things to last and make a difference. I think the other thing about being a leader is, and we know this is uncomfortable, but you're coming from a place of inclusion. I know I've talked about this in numerous past episodes with guests and some of the solo episodes I've done. But inclusion is having these hard conversations about topics, whether you know how to actually do it well or not. Because again, I don't claim to be like, oh, every time I have a conversation with people, I do it just perfectly. And it's not about that. It may come across kind of awkward or stunted at times, but at least it's having the conversation so that we can see how to work through things. And when I talk about you're coming from a place of inclusion and again, doing things the unconventional path, it also means talking about the hard topics such as, being an anti-racism ally. It's talking about the social injustices that happen in our country, in different parts of the world. So things that you stand up for, maybe it's even in the local community, whether there's a school system or poverty, whatever it may be, you are here to hey, I want to actually have a conversation with people about this and get people who also have very similar visions on how we can do this differently and make a change in our local community, make a change in our city and or state or wherever. The thing to also remember when you're feeling lonely, when you're feeling why, I'm the only one doing this and why am I doing this? It really is come back to your why. Why did you choose this path? Why are you so passionate about what you're doing in this current role or in this current time of your life? Keep coming back to that so you can get anchored in it again. And remember, this is a moment in time. It's not a forever. And when you tap back into your why, which I may just do a whole different episode on this too, because Simon Sinek talks about it in one of his books, it really is keeping you anchored into the direction that you're wanting to lead your life and staying very focused on that. Every moment, right, when we're taking risk, you're going to have ups and downs in it, but it doesn't mean it's going to last forever. Another thing that you can do when you have these moments of loneliness, tap into that support system you have. You're not asking them to help with the decision at this point in time. That's not what I'm talking about. But tapping into just feeling like you're being held and they can help kind of cheerlead you on in a sense of just hey, you're doing something that is different, that may be tough, and we got your back. Every woman needs a support system. Remember, we didn't get to where we are today by ourselves, and we can't get to where we want to go tomorrow or the next week or the year after by ourselves. It really does take a tribe of people to help get you there, but knowing you're the one making the decisions, you don't need all that external validation to do what you're doing, but you do need people to sometimes to lean on, just to go and take a deep breath. If you're getting a lot of noise and you're trying to siphon through various things, I'm a huge advocate of taking time by yourself. That's part of that self-care I talk about a lot. But the important thing is really to remember that self-reflection. And when you pause for a moment, you're going back and tuning into your inner wisdom, which every single one of you has, versus the inner critic, versus I've got to play by these certain rules that, have been given to me, these old constructs. When you give yourself permission to have some time alone, and many, many, many really healthy, good leaders will do this, it's sometimes you're doing the monotony thing. And like I said in the previous episode, in episode 105, part of my self-care routine is through fiber arts. And when I'm weaving or if I'm spinning, and now even when I'm doing tapestry, there's ideas that come to me, or there are things that bubble up and I'm yep, I am in the right direction. Here's the feedback that I'm getting, because I give myself that space where that inner wisdom can come through. And it's really important because that's also how you're building your own intuition when you have time alone and you're tapping into your inner wisdom, your inner voice. You can gain clarity there. You can also analyze data. Again, you're shutting out all the information. Let's say you've gotten a ton of emails from people, you've looked over research and stuff. When you pause and look over that, it's okay, here's the next step that I can take in our organization, or how we can do this better, differently, whatever that may be. I already talked a little bit about, coming back to your why, but it really is, again, it goes back to why are you so passionate about what you do? What is it about this current role that you're in? Again, whether it's being a parent, you're being an entrepreneur, you're leading a group of people, what is it about that just makes you light up? I know for many of my women that I work with, as I said, they really do want to make a difference in the world. and they've got some incredible ideas, but they need to continue to take these steps, even if others aren't really a big fan of it. But really look at, are they a fan of this kind of thing over here? Are they actually your kind of like ideal client or your clientele that you truly serve? Are they decision makers? If they're not, say thank you very much and move on. Discerning where that feedback is that you're getting it, tuning out that noise. Also, as a leader, it's really remembering, part of what I've also talked about on this podcast, right? I love to learn, I love to grow. And most of the women that I work with, that is a very similar kind of value philosophy that they come from as well. So think about this. You started in a certain space and you've continued to learn and grow to get you to where you are now. You will continue to reinvent yourself. This is just part of your process. So sometimes, again, when we're in these spaces of time where you're making maybe a difficult decision or you're pivoting due to external environmental events that are going on, it's like, okay, but coming out on the other side will help me realize that I am stronger than I actually even think I am, that I have the ability to make hard decisions, even if it's the unpopular decision, and that I can actually do hard things. That's part of being a beautiful, incredible leader, is the willingness to say, I'm going to continue to have a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset, which is what Carol Dweck talks about, like you're constantly seeing how you're building your skills. You're thinking outside that box. It's not about, I need to perform X so I can get Y. It's like, no, I'm continuing evolving and changing and shifting. It is about the process of you learning something new. It's the willingness to take these steps. It's the willingness to take these actions and then reflect back on the lessons that you're learning. I also talked about earlier, when you're pausing and reflecting, or maybe you're seeking some support from your support system, it's also looking at, listening to feedback, and that needs to come from your audience, your clientele, those that you're serving, or the decision makers versus the family and friends. They can come from a very heartfelt place. But when you're talking to mentors, or even sometimes the coaches that you're looking for that support, or you're trying to get their feedback, pay attention to, these aren't the people that you're directly serving. They can have, especially family and friends, they can really have their own biases. They can have their own fears that come up. If I listen to some of my family members, my gosh, I never would have moved from Indiana to California to go after my dream, which, kept presenting itself over and over and over when people would come to me and tell me about their life story and what can they do, and help them gain confidence and taking a stance, or courage to, have their voice and talk about things in their relationships or their business. I wouldn't have done that if I would have listened to family. So it's remembering where you're getting the feedback. Where is it coming from? And they all have their own biases. I don't mean to say like your mentors and your coaches aren't there to help you along in some aspects, right? It's about that accountability and maybe, learning some different skills. But if they're giving you feedback on an idea, they're not the decision makers in it, just be mindful of that. It can be challenging sometimes to filter out that noise and to not take it personal. But the fact is, it's like you do need to be able to do that. It's that discernment piece of it. And that, again, go back to that, having some time alone, listening to that inner wisdom and seeing, where did I gain this information from of why I'm wanting to make the changes? And it may be because you're seeing things, again, you're a big vision holder. You're seeing things like 5 years down the road of how you need to implement new software, or how you need to shift the teams up a little bit, or how you need to shift your business model a little bit due to the upcoming changes that you can see starting to play out. And not everybody can see that or even want to look that way. I know when I started to do online counseling, again, this has probably been over 3 years ago, right? I got training, I got all kinds of stuff because I'm like, I like to do things more online. I love the flexibility. I love that I could meet people in the different parts of my state. And then it unfolded into doing coaching as well. And I knew, I've heard of people doing coaching like via phone, but I'm like, oh, I can do that video wise as well. I can look at technology. So I got training years ago in this. And of course, it's paid off now, especially with COVID. I know a lot of people, they really struggle trying to get on board with technology and feeling really exhausted. And how do they manage this? And how do they explain it to their people that they're serving? I come from a very confident place. I'm like, it is as effective as doing face-to-face because it is. There's a lot of research out there that does that. But it's just knowing it's like, yep, I'm going to do this differently. I'm not going to wait until other people do it. I have a bigger vision of where I want to go and how I can serve people better. And if I listen to family and friends, they're like, oh, but that may not work. And it's like, nope, this is the way I'm going to do it. And it's paid off. I'm going to encourage you to keep taking those small, courageous steps. And sometimes they are bold leaps. You've got to do what works for you. Stay in alignment with your values. I know I've talked about that in different podcasts too. Being that leader, as I said, it can feel lonely at times, but it's not a forever place. So when you're taking those bold steps, when you're taking those small, courageous steps, you're staying in alignment with you and going after the dreams that you have, what you're being called to do on this planet for right now. And so keep going after that. I read this quote in one of John Maxwell's books, which I'm going to have in the show notes, but it was from Leadership. And he'd actually quoted this woman, Mary Ann Radmacher. I'm not sure I say her name correctly. She's an author and an artist. And I just love her quote because she said, courage doesn't always roar. Sometimes courage is the quiet voice at the end of the day saying, I will try again tomorrow. And so that's it. I mean, it's being able to stay true to that. And I know Susan Cain talks about this too in, I can't remember, there was an article that I had read. She's like, I know a lot of introverts don't necessarily want to take those leadership roles because of all the eyes that are on you and the questions that you get. But at the same time, my dear, if you're an introvert, you're a highly sensitive person, you have these beautiful goals and dreams of how you can make changes in the world. And so I'm going to say step into that. Maybe it isn't leading 5,000 people, which is totally fine. But it's making sure you are stating your ideas in those meetings. It's making sure you ask your clientele, like, how can you serve them better? Because you have so many skills and intellect and knowledge and all of that really can make a difference in this world. So some of the books I've got in the show notes, again, is Elizabeth Gilbert, Big Magic. I think that's a great book. John Maxwell has a lot of leadership books, and so I'd encourage you to read some of his. The ones that I really like are Leader Shift and Good Leaders Ask Great Questions. Glennon Doyle, Tamara and I have talked about her before in one of the podcasts, Untamed. You can really hear how she did things unconventionally, right? She really busted out of kind of playing that good girl and doing what she needed to do, what everybody she thought, because she was miserable. She wasn't listening to her soul. She wasn't following her true self. And so she's broken free from that. Of course, Brene Brown, she's talked quite a bit about the gift of imperfection, those books, but the Dare to Lead, where the leaders now are stepping into those vulnerable moments, right? Having these conversations, really listening to their teams. I know between John and Brene and so many people, they define, leadership as really anyone who takes responsibility for finding the, potential in people, leading people with potential, and the processes that actually make up some of the organizations and things they are. And it's really saying, I've got the courage to help lead people who are ready to be led, who want to make a difference. I joke around with some of my clients. It's like, your job is to run me out of a job. And I don't mean that by trying to, do it unethically. What I mean is they're getting better, stronger, making these changes so that they don't need me anymore. That's the goal of therapy. That's the goal of being a coach. It's like, hey, thank you so much. That's the goal of being a leader. is seeing the potential in the people that you work with and helping them with the skills and knowledge and really helping them develop their own inner guidance, right? So that they can move on and move up the organization. I know when I used to work in corporate America, I had some supervisors, some managers that they did not want me to get above and beyond them. And it became really clear that they really wanted me to stay at the level below them, because whether they felt afraid of not being a leader or that I would somehow take over that, I don't know exactly what it was, but it was fascinating to observe that. And, some of these places I stayed for a while, and then other times I'm like, yeah, you're not willing to help me rise above or help me grow the skills so I can reach my potential, and I would leave and I'd move on to somebody else who would. Those leaders who wanted me to do well, who weren't feeling threatened that I would somehow remove them from the position they were in, really gave me guidance on how I could do things differently. Like, again, if you're coming to me with a problem, come to me with a solution. If you aren't sure how to do X, Y, and Z, here's some books to be able to look at, and come back and tell me what you learned from that. All of those things helped me build the skills that I needed and to start to think even more critically about where I wanted to go and why I wanted to go there. So I hope this episode helped. That remember that moments of loneliness are pretty normal when you're thinking outside the box, when you're doing things unconventionally, when you're kind of testing the old tried and true way of things, because they don't work that way anymore. The constructs that we've been given, it's like, yeah, they may have helped us kind of get to where they are, but when it's the patriarchy or it's pushing women down, oppression, whether it's people of color, women of color, or all of those things, it's knowing it's like, I have a mission here on this planet. I have a passion. I know my why, and I want to make a change. And so keep making those courageous steps that you are doing, and know this is only a moment in time. Keep coming back to the present moment so that fear isn't the one driving you, but you are truly being soul-led. All right, until the next time, take care. To sign up for my workshop on the 5 shifts to end overwhelm and live a more balanced and connected life as a highly sensitive entrepreneur, go out to NicoleBurgessCoaching.com/end overwhelm.